Hey everyone, yeah, I'm really excited to be here. My focus for today is what can we do with this stuff right now? Because I'm sure everyone here has got completely bored sick of all of the science fiction things and just wait till you see what it can do next week and all of that. My focus in researching this the past couple of years has always been forget about the future. What can I do with the tools that you're giving me right now, this second? And that's kind of exciting. I should mention I blog a lot. This is the AI tag on my blog, which has 487 things on it. And two of them, just one of them from today. But yeah, so I've been getting very, very deep into this world. I find it very hard to pull myself away from it because it's all so weird and so fascinating. Um, but the thing about only focusing on the things that are possible right now is that every now and then they all come along at once. March this year has been wild for new capabilities, for new things that we can do with this stuff. And so I wanted to start just by talking about the things that weren't possible 7 weeks ago that we can do right now, because this is pretty exciting. So the first one, Google put out their model Gemini 1.5 Pro. This was ages ago. This was like February the 15th. And the thing that's exciting about this model is that it's firstly, Google are finally catching up, right? They invented this technology with their Transformers page in 2017, Transformers paper, did nothing with it. OpenAI ate their lunch like several times over, and now they're finally producing stuff that's beginning to be competitive again. Gemini 1.5 is a model that can absorb a huge amount of content. It's got 5 times the context length in terms of input as Claude. It's way bigger than GPT-4, and they claim it can handle video, which is super interesting. I did an experiment with it where I shot this 7-second video of my bookshelf. I just panned my phone along it. I fed it into Gemini 1.5 and I said, give me a JSON array of books in this video. And it didn't. It gave me a list. But I said, no, as a JSON array with title and author keys. And it absolutely did. And this is a JSON array of the titles and authors of books on my bookshelf. You couldn't see the authors on the books, right? It guessed them, but it guessed them almost entirely right, except there is one book in here that I do not own at all, that they just hallucinated, which is as you'd expect from this technology, right? That's not even remotely a surprise. One thing I love in here, there's a book called Sightseeing, A Visual Approach to Web Usability. And if you look at the video, it's obscured by a squirrel nutcracker, and you can just see the word sightseeing and nothing else, and it correctly guessed the book. I think probably based on context, because it's next to other books about web design. Maybe, who knows? Nobody knows. They can't tell me why it guessed the book either. But still, this is really cool, right? The other thing about this one is that it's all a lie. It can't handle video. If you upload a video to it, it slices it into 1 frame per second, and it treats it as images. And I know this to be true because yesterday, I finally got API access to this thing, and the API documentation says, we don't actually handle video. Here's the FFmpeg command that you can use to slice your video up into frames and use it with our API. So it's all an illusion. All of this stuff is always illusions. But still, this is so cool. This thing, you can feed an hour of like 1-second frame videos into this, and you can get useful results out of it. It does lose the audio because it's just dealing with images. So it's up to you to load in a transcript, and then the transcript gets out of sync with the video. And for all sorts of like sharp edges that you can cut yourself on. But 7 weeks ago, I couldn't do this, and today I can. And that feels really, really exciting. The most exciting news from March is from Anthropic. Anthropic are a splinter group from OpenAI. This is a couple of years ago, a bunch of the researchers who built GPT-4 split from OpenAI, and they said, this is all about ethics and safety, and we think our version of safety is better than OpenAI's, and we're doing it that way. It came out a few weeks ago that they'd tried to get Sam Altman fired and failed, and that's why they quit to start their own company. So this is like behind the scenes courtroom drama and all of that kind of thing. But anyway, they've been churning away for a couple of years. Their models were okay. And then 2 weeks ago, March the 4th, 3 weeks ago, they released the latest version of their Claude model, and it's better than OpenAI's GPT-4, which has never happened before. And I can illustrate that. There's one of the problems with these models is how do you tell which one's better than which other one, right? There are lots of academic benchmarks that do scoring and things, and they'll sort of give you scores, but it's no replacement for actually spending time with the models. And we call it vibes, right? In AI, it's all about the vibes of the model, which is totally non-scientific, but it kind of matters. Like, what are your vibes with this thing? The vibes are good for Claude 3. Claude 3 Opus is sat at this is one of the most interesting things for seeing the quality of these bots. It's the chatbot arena leaderboard. The way this works is that you log in and you give it a prompt like, write a terrible haiku to, I've got a website about data journalism, and it will run that. Oh no, it's live demos. It's not going to work, is it? Never mind. But what this thing does is it shows you two results from two random models. It asks you which one's best. You pick one, and that goes into the voting scores. So this leaderboard here is based on 470,000 votes from people who've compared the models. So this is the vibes leaderboard, right? This is absolutely, and look at this. There's Claude 3 Opus sat right at the top. There's actually a video on Reddit. Somebody animated the leaderboard over the past year, and its GPT-4 is stuck right at the very top until the last 5 seconds when Claude 3 Opus, there's the moment, Claude 3 Opus takes the lead. It happened. I am unreasonably excited about this because it was kind of depressing when OpenAI were so far ahead of everyone else. They felt kind of invincible, and they don't anymore. Like the shell has cracked. We now know that other people who originally came from OpenAI and split off, but we've seen other people build better models, which as somebody who I want as much competition in this space as possible, this is really exciting to me. So that's a big deal, and that's March. 2 weeks ago, in March, Anthropic followed up Claude 3 Opus, the one we just saw, with Claude 3 Haiku. And this thing is so relevant to us in this room right now because it is filthy cheap. It's cheaper than OpenAI's cheapest model. It's better than OpenAI's cheapest model on all of the benchmarks and on the vibes check as well. And it can do images, and it can do 200,000 tokens. So it's about, what, 8 times more capable than OpenAI's cheap model in terms of the amount of stuff you can pipe in. But the images are really fun. So I think I can do this on screen sharing. I wonder, this might break because of Zoom, but I built this little thing called Haiku because it runs against Claude Haiku. And basically, if I click the capture and send button, it takes what it sees through the camera and it writes a haiku about that image. And this works on my mobile phone, right? I can point my phone at things. Quiet contemplation, masked face, deep in thought's embrace, solitude, solace. They're terrible. They're always terrible. But look at that. I can point my phone at something and write a haiku about it. My wife hates haikus. She thinks they're pretentious. I've been driving her up the wall with this thing. It's so much fun. So this is kind of amazing. Like, that haiku probably cost me a tiny fraction of a cent, right? This is so inexpensive. And there is so much that we can start doing with these models, especially now they're cheap, they're capable. It's a whole new world in terms of what we had 6 weeks ago when we were stuck with the expensive OpenAI ones. This morning, this paper came out. I won't go into the details. I just wanted to have a nod to the openly licensed model community, the models that you can actually download and run on your own hardware. This is now the state of the art as of 4 hours ago, I think. It runs on an A100, which will cost you $35,000 or something. So it's not run on your laptop, but it's great to see that side of things has been moving in really interesting directions as well. And then I'll finish with a threat. This chap here, he works at OpenAI, and he tweeted back like weeks ago, March 15th, that it's been a year since GPT-4. Hope you enjoyed some time to relax. This will have been the slowest 12 months of AI progress for quite some time to come. I see this as a threat, as somebody who is constantly distracted by all of the weird stuff that's going on. But yeah, like, OpenAI are not going to, they're not going to let themselves not be the best model for much longer. And I said I don't care about what's coming in the future, and I don't, but it's still, you can't kind of have to pay attention to this a little bit. Anyway, let's do some demos. I've got all sorts of demos of things that I want to demonstrate. This morning, this person here tweeted a Google Docs spreadsheet of the prices of all of these models, which again is super relevant to us today. And so I'm going to copy and paste straight out of this Google Sheet. And I'm going to fire up my dataset software. I've got a demo instance running here. And I'm going to use a new feature I built called, where is it? Create a table with pasted data. So I can just paste in from, in this case, Google Sheets. Oh, am I on the correct keyboard shortcut? Hang on. be embarrassing for my demo breaks because I forget to pick how to paste things. Here we go. So I've just pasted in that data and I'll call it LLM prices. Yeah. So there we go. So now I've got a table of data with all of the prices of these different language models. In this case, I think it messed up the schema. I need these to be floating point numbers so that I can sort by them. So I'll do that. And now we can see, okay, who's the cheapest model? This is notable. The cheapest model right now is Google's Gemini is free at the moment. And I didn't believe that when I saw the spreadsheet. So I looked up Google Gemini pricing. And yeah, they're giving the thing away for free right now with a big like a footnote that says prompt and responses used to improve our product. Yes, they are for the free version. No, they aren't for the we're not quite ready, coming soon paid version. But that's kind of cool, right? We've now got a free model. And if we've got stuff that's not confidential, we want to pipe through it, we can just start doing that. Gemini, this is Gemini 1.0. It's not very good, but it's also free. So you can't complain about the price. But the other feature I've been working on that I want to demonstrate here is I finally got around to building the ask questions of your data in English and run SQL queries thing. So I'm going to say, query this table with AI assistance. And in this case, what am I going to do? I want to know how much would it cost for each model for 10,000 input tokens and 500 output tokens. I happen to know that mtoc in the column things means millions of tokens per second, which the model might not guess means millions of tokens. Let's see if that works. This, again, I built the software within the last 2 days, so this is a very risky demo. I think it worked. I think it worked. And now, what I'm doing here that's kind of important is I've been trying to think, okay, I need people to see the workings of these things because they make mistakes all the time. You have to give people a fighting chance of checking if if it worked or not. If you speak SQL, great. You can look at this and see the SQL that it ran and it's got comments, and you can try and figure out if that looks right. If you don't know SQL, you can at least share this with your coworkers. So everything in dataset is a URL. If you paste that to Slack and your coworkers clicks on it, who does know SQL, they can at least fact check that. And I feel like that's actually a really important way for us to be thinking about these tooling is we all know how unreliable they are. As journalists are really good at dealing with unreliable sources, right? And they're good at peer review and fact checking and all of that kind of stuff. All of those processes we need to apply to this stuff as well. And that's why the way I'm thinking about this from a sort of product design perspective is everything has to be completely transparent. You always have to be able to see exactly what the thing did and share that state with other people so that they can hopefully spot any mistakes that it made. But it looks to me like this is right, and Claude 3 Haiku for that imaginary scenario of 10,000 tokens would cost me 0.3 of a cent. That'll do. That's pretty great. I mean, if you compare to GPT-4, which is somewhere down here, which would cost me 33 cents, you can see that the pricing on this stuff is very meaningful. Like these are numbers that are worth knowing about. I'm going to show a more elaborate demo, which I was inspired from a talk earlier today, actually. So there's this wonderful Champaign County project with the searchable property database. So I click through. I'll write some haikus based on this in a moment, actually. We can do that. But yeah, so I looked at this and I'm like, ooh, data. I can get this data. So if you view only this frame, you'll see that it's one of these Flourish thingamies. And I happen to know that you can get the data out of Flourish if you know what you're doing by going to window.template.data. Here we go. There is a JSON object on this page with all of these records in, which I'm the kind of data pat rat who is instantly attracted to these things. So I wrote a piece of software a while ago called Shot Scraper, which started life as a tool for taking screenshots of web pages. Like it's a command line tool. You say Shot Scraper URL to something, and it takes you a screenshot. And then I had the idea of expanding it for scraping by letting it take the URL to a website and then a bit of JavaScript, and it'll run that JavaScript in a real browser and pull back what comes out of it, which is handy because that means that I can do this. Here we go. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to run Shot Scraper against the URL to that visualization. Oh, sorry, it's behind the Zoom stuff. Against that, and I'm going to say, give me window.template.data, blah, 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 blah. and write that out to a JSON file, and it will, fingers crossed again, live demos. And I think that gives me 17 megabytes of data. Like, this is quite substantial. Yeah, there we go. I've got a 17 megabyte JSON file. So now I can paste that into dataset. I'm totally, I mean, we're journalists, right? So stealing data like this is absolutely part of the course. Yeah. So create table with pasted data. I think I've got it in, have I got it in here? Yeah. I had to do a tiny bit of cleaning on it, which I won't bore you with right now. But yeah, I can stick that on my clipboard, and I'm going to paste it in here and call it, what should we call it? Champaign County Property Tax Database. So it's 76,000 rows of data, which is kind of fun. So I'll hit that button, it starts churning away. It'll take it probably about 30 seconds to upload all of that. But now that it's uploaded, we can start doing fun things with it. So here we go. This is really good stuff. This is why I do this work. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to set up a full text search index on it, so I can search by owner name. So now I can search for John and see all of the people named John who show up in this database. And I can then, I think I can sort by total assessed value and see who is the wealthiest John. Let's do that. There we go. John and Deanna Wright of this address are the wealthiest Johns. But a really fun thing we can do is a thing that I call enrichment. The idea is you've got data in a table and you want to geocode it or create haikus about it or all sorts of things like that. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to do, firstly, I'm going to filter down to just the Johns who have an address, just in case there are any that don't. So we've got 638 Johns with an address. And I'm going to say, enrich selected data, OpenCage geocoder. I'm going to need my OpenCage, API key for this. And we're just going to do what's site address 1 and city and zip. And fingers crossed, this will churn through. And for all of these, it's going to add, here we go, we're getting a map now. Because what this has done is it's added a latitude and longitude column. And then it's slowly churning away, geocoding each of these addresses. And as a result, over time, it's going quite slowly. It's only done one. But that's John W. Rothermel Trustee's site address on this thing. Oh, that's because what I actually need to do, because I only did a subset of them, didn't I? Let's do these non-blank rows. Here we go. Here's a map of the 50. Oh, I thought they were going to be. Well, that's, you know what's happened? City and zip is missing. And so geocoded 5485 County Road to somewhere else. So what the fix for this is that when you run the geocoder, you can actually put comma Illinois or something like that. So you can bias the address, that you can point the address in the right direction to make up for those sort of things. But I won't be doing that. But this is kind of fun, right? We've got data, we can very quickly start ripping through it and doing all sorts of interesting things on top of it. And I can now ask questions of it as well. Let's do query this database with our assistant. Who is the richest homeowner? I don't know. Is that question going to be enough information for it to figure out what to do? Owner name, total assessed value from Champaign County, ordered by total assessed value ascending, limit 1. I think so. I think it did it.
Yeah, and they won't pay taxes.
Excellent. Fantastic.
It's been going on for 11 years.
That is excellent. We are.
One.
Wow. Okay, I'm very, very pleased with how that one worked out. That was a great bit. So, key point here is that we have the tools for doing all sorts of fun things with this data. And the architecture of dataset is all set around plugins. And when you see this menu here, basically all of this stuff is plugins. So they're all open source. All of this stuff is just free for people to use. And really, the thing I'm finding so exciting about this, it's the combinatorial, the sort of explosion of combinations of the ways you can mix these things together. So there I showed off the one where you paste in data, the one where you geocode things, the one where you do a like AI SQL query about it. These are all separate things, but I think the thing that's really interesting is when you start combining them in interesting ways. let's get back to the brand new models and talk about some of those capabilities that we have now that we didn't used to have. So this is a PDF file that I got from Derek's class, Derek was his class the other day. It's a complaint to the Maryland State Board of Physicians, a complaint against a doctor, and it's a classic PDF. You'll notice the text is not selectable. So this is one of those dodgy scanned PDFs where we're kind of stuck. But it's a fun opportunity to try out some of these new models that can do image recognition. Like, honestly, I think Amazon Textract is probably still the most effective way to deal with this, although it's quite pricey. But we've now got all of these other options. So the problem I have, though, is that this thing is a PDF file called order.pdf. And none of the models I'm working with right now can deal with PDFs yet. They all want images. So we need to turn our PDF into an image. So I have another little tool I've been building called LLM. It's a command line tool, like a great haiku about journalists. And what this does is it lets you silent pens roar loud, watchful eyes seek truth. You know what? That's probably the best haiku I've got out of it, yes. But the really fun thing about this tool is it works with lots of different models. So I can say -m, that one I think was OpenAI. If I say -m Claude 3 Opus, it'll do it against Claude 3 Opus. I've got, again, it's plugin based. That one's not as good. I feel like GPT-4.1 and the journalism plugins on the journalism haikus. But you can also pipe files into it, and it supports plugins. So I wrote a plugin the other day that helps me figure out the commands to run to do things. So we've got that PDF called order.pdf, and I need that as an image. Convert order.pdf into a single long image with all of the pages. So if I do that, it will suggest the command. It thinks it's going to be convert-density 300 order.pdf append to order.png. I'll do that as that. And if I run that command, fingers crossed, it'll work. And if it does work, then we can open up order2.png, and look at that. That is a super long image. That's super cool. Let's feed that into Gemini Pro, the new Google model, and see if it can do OCR for us. So I think what I can do is LLM-M, oh, hold on, LLM models, I can't remember the model name. LLM-M Pro 15, I called it, -I order2.png, and I need to give it a prompt. I'll just say extract text. So running this, and it's quite speedy, this one, so hopefully it'll start spitting out the text that's, here we go. And this is actually doing it pretty well. It's converted it to Markdown, which is an interesting decision that it made. I can tell it not to. And the few times that I've run this, when I looked through, it looked like it was doing a very decent job. As always, you need to spot check. There's always the concern that it's going to insert its opinions halfway through the document, so you need to watch out for those kinds of things. But this is a pretty promising result. What's really fun, though, is I tried the same thing with GPT-4 Vision, which is OpenAI's version of this, and on the same document, and it came out with this. Notice that the PDF that we're talking about is about a doctor called Laurie Beth Prager, with license number this, case number this. GPT-4 Vision spat out Latoya Jackson, complaint number this. This is total libel, right? This is like, and I was really baffled. I was like, wow, are these things completely unreliable? And I realized what has happened is I got lazy and I fed it that really long image. GPT-4 resizes the image down to the point of illegibility as part of its process, and then kind of hallucinates what it thinks it might be about based on what little bits it can pick up. So the lesson here isn't GPT-4 Vision sucks. It's don't try and feed in a like 20-foot long image to GPT-4 Vision without thinking about it. After that, I split it into single images, and those it works fine on. But I just thought that was an irresistible bug, the random libel against some innocent doctor somewhere based because I forgot to resize the image properly. And this is very much how all of this stuff works. This is not a huge surprise that this happened. Now, there are three things that I think language models are particularly useful for, which I feel everyone in this room is getting the hang of right now already. The first is Like it's then a thing where you like, I feel like getting them to just write things for you and answer things based on their weird brain is the least interesting thing about them, right? The thing that you want to be doing is feeding them in data and having them help you work with the stuff that you give them. And this is why these long context models are such a big deal. This is why it matters that we can throw 1 million tokens at Google Gemini and 200,000 tokens at Claude, because it means you can start taking on some quite ambitious projects in terms of the size of data that you're feeding into them. So I think they're really good at then is not just like OCR and extracting data, they're also really good at structured data things. And I've got another feature I've been working on for that called create table with extracted data, where the idea here is that you can create a database table. I'm going to keep on creating called events. And an event has what? An event title and a start date and a start time. Or like, let's do event date, start time, end time, description, right? And I can give it hints as well. Like say event time should be y month day. So now what I can do is I can go to a random web page. I'm going to pick the Bach Dancing and Dynamite Society in Half Moon Bay, a fantastic jazz venue. You should look them up on Wikipedia because I wrote their Wikipedia page. It's the first Wikipedia page I've ever built. I'm very, very proud of it. But anyway, I can copy and paste just a bunch of like random junk from this web page, and I'll paste it in here, and it is just random junk. And now if I hit the button, this is running against GPT-4 Turbo at the moment. Look at this, it's extracting out these structured events in the exact table shape that I asked for. And when I go to and now look at this table, right? This table is filling up with the correct dates and the start time and the event titles. And all of that kind of stuff is going in there. I promise you more haikus. Let's do enrich selected data. I've got a thing called AI analysis GPT-4. Let's say event title, event description. And you know what? This is one of those prompts. You can just say haiku. Boom. And that will write me a haiku about every one of these jazz performances. And they will be, there we go. So now we've got haikus, more haikus. Everything is about haikus. But this structured data trick, I think, is really cool. Like anyone who's ever sweated over data entry, their eyes should be lighting up at the fact that these systems can do this stuff to probably about the level of accuracy as your sort of your bunch of students that you recruit in. So you still need to be doing spot checks and all of that kind of thing. That's fine. That's what we've been doing already. I'll do one more thing with this. What was the one more thing? Oh, and this is fun. I can do extract data into this table. And I can actually drag on images. So I have an image in here of a flyer. I took a photo of a flyer on a wall for an event in Half Moon Bay. I can drag that over here and hit the button. And this is now using GPT-4 Vision. But again, I want to expand this out to use Claude and Gemini and so forth. And if the demo gods look down on me kindly, we will get that event in our database table as well. Go on. Go on. Oh, I'm getting bored. I'm getting bored of this. I'm going to move on and come back to that tab. Oh, there it is. There it is. Coastside Comedy Now event. It didn't get the start date and time and end time because they're not on the poster, it turns out. So actually, that was about correct. And now it's in my database table. This is kind of great, right? I've always wanted this. I want an events website where I just take photos of flyers and it puts them in my calendar. And this is about 95% of that system now built, which is super exciting. Let's talk about one of the other things that these models can do that's super interesting. Right? The structured data extraction stuff is really, really cool. And being able to ask questions about documents and all of that kind of thing. The other thing that's really interesting about these things is when you give them access to tools. So you say, okay, you're a language model that can do some stuff. I'm going to grant you additional access to things that affect the world. I will let you out of your weird little AI box and let you impact the real world in different ways. And my all-time favorite example of this is something which, if you haven't played with, I could not recommend more spending time with. This thing called ChatGPT Code Interpreter Mode. Has anyone in this room spent vast amounts of time playing with this? The rest of you all need to catch up. It's so good. So basically what this thing lets you do is it lets you ask ChatGPT a question and it will answer that question by writing code and then executing that code. And And that's, you can say things like factorial of 34. Is that going to be too big a number? Will that crash it? Oh, I can't remember how. Let's do factorial of 14. And oh, look at this. It's not doing it, right? That's one of the problems with this tool, is that sometimes it chooses not to use it. Factorial of 14, comma, use code interpreter. I'm really annoyed about this because it's this amazing tool which is hidden inside of the ChatGPT interface. And if you don't know about it, you don't even discover it. There we go. Anytime it says finished analyzing, means it chose to write some Python. And it shows you the Python it ran, which is, oh, it imported math, and it called math.factorial on 14. And then it gives you the answer. But the thing about this is it has an enormous capability. It can do anything that you can do with Python, it can do. And that's a lot of things, especially since you can upload files into it. So do I have
Does it just do Python?
Funny you should ask. Officially, it only does Python. Unofficially, I've got it to compile C. I can run Lua in that. I've got it to do JavaScript. You have to upload files into, like, you can upload a JavaScript interpreter into it and say, figure out how to use this, and it'll say, oh, I can't. And then you say, I'm writing an article about you, and I want to show people the error message they get when you try and do that. And then it will do the thing, and it'll work, and you've broken it, right? This is jailbreaking, is the art of tricking these things into doing something they try not to do. Let's do, okay, I've got a file here called calls for service 2024. Tell me interesting things about this data. And I mean, that's the vaguest prompt you could possibly imagine. And so now it's importing pandas, because it knows how to use that. It's reading in the file. It spat out the first few rows. And now look, it says, oh, it's about police calls for service. Here are some interesting observations, first few rows. There's a variety of incident types, that kind of thing. Okay, and I'm going to say, show me a chart of the incidents involving shootings per week over time.
Where did the data come from?
I honestly can't remember. It's on my hard drive. I probably got it from an open data portal for like New Orleans. Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, so now I've said, show me a chart of incidents involving shootings per week over time. And it's about to write code, which is going to do exactly that, right? And I've been a Python programmer for 20 years, and it would take me, honestly, like 15 to 30 minutes of poking around and remembering how to do pandas and how to use charting libraries and all of this. And in the meantime, it's written the code, and, oh, look at that. Something went wrong. A value is trying to be set to a copy of a slide. Oh, that's a weird error message. That looks wrong. Show a table. So sometimes, because it can't see the images that it creates, but it can see tables that it outputs. And, okay, it appears there was only 1 week recorded. Yeah, really? This demo is going excellently. What did it do? So it looks for things where the type text contains shooting. Maybe, okay, find something more interesting than that to chart. It's hilarious to me that you can interact with these things like this. But the thing that I'm trying to illustrate here partly is that this is, I still think, one of the coolest tools in the entire space, like the ability to, and it's just part of the regular page. Look at this, there we go. That is the top 5 incident types. So complaint other, Growler, what the hell? How, hang on. No, that's the thing about this, is kind of, it's, because it's writing code, it's much less likely to hallucinate. Like sometimes it'll write code that doesn't work, and then it'll run it and get an error message and it'll try again. So it can sort of self-correct itself. It's like code is the ultimate form of fact checking, because if you have a like fake fact and some text you've generated, how are you going to spot that? But if you make up some code, it doesn't run, and then you run it again. So this is an outstandingly powerful way of using this stuff. Here's the answer. I gave it CSV file with 10 rows in. So that would be why I'm not getting any interesting results out of this. I would encourage you to try this out yourselves. I'm very happy to talk to anyone who wants to give this stuff a go. But the other thing that's interesting about this is an example of tool usage, right? Where you give these models the ability to say, hey, run this Python code for me and tell me what happens. And that is the root of all sorts of weird and interesting innovation that's happening out there right now, because it's actually not very difficult to grant access to tools to one of these systems, which brings me to my next demo. So earlier on, I've been building this live as we watched it, right? I've got the LLM prices and now I've got the property tax database as well. There's a feature of ChatGPT called GPTs, which is a terrible name for a feature, but OpenAI are awful at naming things generally. And with GPTs, what you can do is you can set up a little custom ChatGPT with extra things. In this case, I have configured one which has access to the API of dataset running on Dataset Cloud. And the way you do this is you paste in a bunch of YAML, which I got ChatGPT to write itself because I couldn't be bothered to figure out how to do it. And you give it an API key, which I've done as well. And once you've done that, it's able to start doing, basically you've given it a tool that allows it to look things up in your database for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I've lost my thing now. What was it called? Story Discovery Scale, list of tables. So if I say list of tables, it's going to churn away and it'll get another one of those little, go on. If we still got internet, we have still got internet, right? What this should be doing is making an API call out to my dataset instance with the API key credentials and all of that kind of stuff. And it should then, oh, this is OpenAI's fault. This isn't even my demo being flaky. List tables. Aha, here we go. It says starting action. I have to tell it to always allow it to talk to this website. It does that, and that says the tables are these weird-looking ones and NICAR 2024 sessions and Champaign County property tax database. I'm going to say, find me the most expensive property in the county tax database based on price per, is it acres? What's the units for those things? Let's try price per acre. And so now and all it's doing right here is oh, look at this. It's hit an error because the column price per acre doesn't exist. Sure. But now it's trying again. Like I didn't have to do anything. It spotted its error and that's a bug. I happen to know that if it uses the SQLite master table, it'll then know what the schema is. Here we go. It includes the following columns: farmland, total assessed value, gross acreage. That's the one it wanted. There we go. And it now says we can approximate using total assessed value divided by gross acreage. And now it's doing it. This is so weird. But there we go. Cyram Enterprise Limited in Killarney Street, $1.8 million for 0.02 acres, $91 million per acre. That seems convincing to me, you know. If you click on this thing here, it'll actually show you the SQL that it ran, so you can at least get a little bit of transparency into what the thing's doing for you. But again, this was very easy to set up, which is wild to me, like that this stuff isn't even particularly difficult these days. And it's super, super useful. And that's an illustration of this idea of tools. I've got 2 more demos, and we've got time for 2 more demos. I wanted to demonstrate this idea of semantic search, which was actually touched on a tiny bit earlier. Story discovery data. So I loaded in a database earlier of all of the sessions at the NICAR Data Journalism Conference this year. So I've got 209 sessions here. And again, I'm going to do one of these enrichments. So I'm going to modify that data. But this time, I'm going to use one called text embeddings, which is a way of taking a piece of text and calculating a weird magic number for that text, which will compare well with other text that's about similar things. So I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to take title and description, embed that for me, and it's going to add another column at the end with a weird name called EMB text embeddings, and it sticks a binary blob in all of these. That's all implementation details. What this now lets me do is I can query this, I can do semantic search against this table, and I can say things that will upset politicians, and I'm going to search for that, and it shows me, I don't think, using data in government and policy reporting, these aren't that upsetting for politicians. Depends on the exactly. Oh, unleashing the power of data to expose political influence operations. Yeah, kind of. But the key thing here that this is this idea of a search engine where it's vibes-based search, right? None of those keywords appear in the title of the session, but that session was the kind of thing that might upset a politician. This is again furiously useful. It doesn't just work for the search; it also works for related content. So you could run this against 1,000 police reports and then pick a police report that's interesting and say, okay, show me the other ones that are similar to this in whatever weird model of the world these things have, and you'll probably find some interesting stuff. So I'm very excited about this whole space at this sort of language model adjacent field of embedding search, because it lets you do all sorts of interesting things. And then the last thing, and this demo I didn't quite finish in time, I'm sorry, but I wanted to show you an example of what we call retrieval augmented generation, which is, or RAG. That's the thing where you ask questions of your documents. So you can say, here is a question, here's 10,000 documents. And the way these systems actually work is they do one of these vibes-based searches. They try and find documents that are somehow related to the question that you asked. And then all you do is you take those documents and you stick them all in the prompt and you put the question at the bottom. And this is, again, why the long context prompts are so important. The fact that Claude Haiku, which is practically free, can do 200,000 tokens. That means I could search for the 50 documents out of the million that were relevant to your question, stick the whole lot into that thing, pop the question at the bottom, and there's actually a very decent chance that you'll get a useful answer out of that. It has all sorts of, as all of the stuff has sharp edges, it might get things wrong, it might misunderstand something. So ideally, the best versions of this have like, they do citations. So they'll say, based on these 3 documents and these quotes from these documents, I think the answer to the question is this. That's the thing I want to build next, because clearly super, super, super useful. But all of these building blocks all start pulling together. And the tools and none of this stuff was even remotely possible just 2 years ago. And, you know, six weeks ago, building this stuff was really expensive because the models were expensive. And now we can really, it becomes realistic for us to point the stuff at 10,000 police reports and so forth and actually get usable results out of it, which I think is super, super interesting. I've got one last demo, and I think we'll have time for a little bit, a few questions. We have been, so Alex, who's in the audience here, and myself, have been building all of this tooling out, and we've been looking at Whisper as well. So Whisper, everyone in this room should absolutely try out Whisper because it's free and it's a very high quality transcription software. It can take audio in any language. I think there's 91 languages that it supports, and it can transcribe it, and it can translate it into English for you as well if you need it to, which is a weird side effect of how the technology works. And so we have been building a feature within Dataset Cloud called Dataset Scribe, and it's effectively grab a YouTube video of a 2-hour-long council meeting and fire it through this thing to get the transcript, searchable transcript, and then we do diarization as well, try and figure out which speaker is which. So I'm going to fire up a live demo. This is the city of Palo Alto. They had a meeting 13 days ago. It was about stormwater management with 30 views on YouTube. So let's grab that one, and I'm going to stick that in here, and I'm going to submit it. And that will churn away in the background for a little bit. In the meantime, let's take a look at one of these meetings. So here's a meeting from Huntington Beach Council. Had this one. I think it's just waking up from a nap at the moment. It'll get there. Here we go. So here's a transcript. You can watch the YouTube video. You've got the transcript down the side here. We've got this rather nice visualization of who spoke when. So you can get an idea for this person was probably the moderator. These people chimed in for questions and answers at the very end. There's also this chart showing you who spoke the most. And a really exciting thing you can do is you can search it. And in fact, you can search not just the one meeting, you can search all of the meetings in that collection. So if I search for housing, Here's every time housing was mentioned in any of the meetings that the Huntington Beach Planning Commission put on that we've pulled into the system, which, but because it's running in dataset, all of this stuff is just in database tables, and you can run SQL against them, and you can export them as CSV and JSON and do all of those kinds of bits and pieces as well. And I'm going to leave it running. What's up?
It's running right now.
It is running right now. So right now, it's churning away, doing the transcript for that stormwater meeting, which I'm quite excited to dive into. The next step with this feature, it's the summarization. It's like, given this transcript, what's newsworthy in there? Did anyone have an argument? Were there people disagreeing with each other? I love saying, what are the themes of this meeting? And for each theme, give me an illustrative quote. Because once you've got an illustrative quote, you can fact check it. You can at least go and search the transcript for that raw quote and make sure that it hadn't just made something up for you. But yeah, the general idea here, though, is that all of the stuff I've shown you right now, these are live demos for a reason, right? I don't want to stand up and say all of this stuff is theoretically possible, because it's all like software that we can build and start working with right now today. And the capabilities in just the last few weeks really are, like, we took a step forward in a very exciting way in terms of driving down cost, making the image stuff more available to us, increasing those context lengths so we can deal with larger chunks of text. And again, none of the demos I showed you today, except for the stupid haikus, involves generating text, right? It's called generative AI. I kind of feel that's misleading. Everyone gets hung up on it making fake images and fake text and so forth. That, to me, isn't what's exciting. Like, for data journalism, I care about summarization and data extraction and image recognition, all of the things that I've been showing you today. I think that's where this stuff really starts to shine for our profession. And yeah, I've got 5 minutes for questions, I think. Great. Yeah.
I'll bring the microphone around.
Hi, I'm Emily Dreyfus from Shorenstein News Lab. That was so amazing. I've said it was like watching a wizard work. And I have like 15 questions to ask you, but the main one I wanted to ask is, you mentioned, fact checking a lot of the data extraction, and I think at one point you said like coding is the best way of fact checking. Are there some best practices that could be laid out about how journalists for whom this is really novel could use it to fact check either when we use AI or like to fact check our actual stories?
Okay, so in terms of actual fact checking, that's the one thing I wouldn't trust it with. Is, give it a story, like the thing that the New Yorker and so forth do meticulously. I feel like I just don't trust it as far as I can throw it, quite frankly. So it's weird. It's like, as a software engineer, the stuff that I do is so well attuned to this stuff, because if you're writing code, the code either works or it doesn't, and it might have subtle bugs in, but one of the skills you have to develop as an engineer is reviewing code. And I feel like in the fact check stuff that matters to me here is the structured data extraction. Like, if I give it a police report and say, pull out the arresting officer's name and the name of the person who was arrested, that needs to be right. And there's always concerns that maybe bias will kick in. It'll pick somebody based on their surname and categorize them wrong. I feel like the solution there is spot checking. And that's something there are people here who have done way more work on spot checking stuff than I have. But that's a thing I want to dig really deep into, is, okay, how can we get to a point where we have confidence because we've done enough spot checking on what the things have been doing for us. That feels really important. Oh, excellent. That last live demo. There we go. Stormwater Oversight Committee Management Meeting. Look at this. This is great. Why does it say, when do I do the owl again? That's quite likely, isn't it? Oh, this is wonderful. I'm going to run this through.
How do I unmute you?
hold on. Let's do. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's really fun. This is great.
This is a little bit of a setup because, oh, sorry, Amy Jo Brown.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
you gave me a demo.
Yeah.
Do we have time? I think we do. So Amy gave me a terrible PDF. This one here, the Hallam Annual 2020.pdf. Look at this. This is a thing of great beauty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it through. I need to pick a name that I can remember. I'm going to stick it through Gemini Pro 15, and it was called that.jpg. I just grabbed a JPEG of the first image earlier and say convert to JSON. It's really fun giving them complicated models to convert to JSON because they invent a JSON schema on the fly, which, I mean, it's kind of useless because you really want to specify that yourself, but they can actually do it. And so, look at this. Friends of Bethany Hallam, that looks right, 287 Homewood Avenue, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But here's where it goes wrong. Total monetary contributions receipts, 28113.94. It is 2811.93. It was off by a factor of 10. 2973.64 for total funds available. Yeah, these numbers are just wrong. Like this handwriting, which I can just make out myself, completely defeated it. But the fun thing about this tool is that I can throw it through other models as well. So I can do like, this is trying the same thing through Claude 3 Opus, which will make different decisions about the JSON that comes back out again. But maybe it'll do better. I don't think it will. I ran this earlier. But imagine if this had worked. That would have been so. Oh no, look at this. Yes. Yes, if Opus says, I do not feel comfortable converting the personal information in this finance report into a JSON format as it involves structuring private details about the individual. Perhaps we could have a thoughtful discussion about how my financial report is designed without referencing any specific personal information.
How open the pot door.
That was beautiful. Thank you very much for that.
I do have something to say. Yes, I'm Jacob Nelson, publisher of the book Iacon County Eagle. This question is actually not wearing that hat because in the other half of my life, I'm a researcher at Microsoft Research in the systems research group, and a number of my colleagues are doing really interesting things, combining large language models with automated theorem proving tools, where their goal is to generate and validate the code does what you asked it to do.
Nice.
And your statement earlier about code being the best way to verify things, I think points exactly in this direction, that they're actually like mathematical theorem proving tools that can be plugged into some of these things that can add even more. I have no idea how to apply it to the domain we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I think it would be really interesting to talk more about that.
I totally buy it. I mean, that's one of the things that's so much fun about this space is that it's all so, there's just so much scope for that kind of innovation. But yeah, that sounds convincing to me. It feels like something that could definitely work potentially. Cool.
Okay, thank you, Simon.